After being engaged for 7 months, I find myself caught in the emotional storm of my fiancé's abusive family. Am I wrong for wanting to leave? We've been together for 4 years and engaged for 7 months, both excitedly planning our wedding for the fall next year. But as we try to build a future together, I'm drowning in the shadows of her painful past, a past I can't ignore. Her childhood was an endless nightmare. Her parents were cruel, self-centered, and manipulative. She became their scapegoat, enduring a relentless barrage of emotional abuse. The moment she turned 18, they cast her aside as if she were nothing. Yet, through it all, she persevered. A bright student, a tireless worker, she carved out her own path, earning scholarships, working part-time, and now, she's independent, with a successful career to show for her grit. But that's where the illusion of peace ends. She still keeps in contact with them. They haven't changed, they've only grown more dependent. What was once a distant, toxic relationship has morphed into something insidious. They now invade her life, like a virus slowly infecting everything around us. They beg for her help, use emotional blackmail to guilt her into supporting them, draining her in every way they can. And they don't even try to be polite about it. Rude, smug, and utterly obnoxious, they push their way in, and my fiancée just can't say no. No matter how vicious their words or how overtly they try to intimidate her, she's unable to draw a line. I've always known about her family's dark history, and I've supported her as best as I could through the years of turmoil. But in the last year, everything has escalated. Her family has become bolder, more obnoxious, more demanding. They show up at our house uninvited, disrupting everything. Her mother treats the place like it's her personal kingdom, acting as if she's the wicked stepmother in a fairy tale. Her father, well, he's just a bully, drinking all my beer and leaving half the fridge empty. Her brothers? They show up, sometimes to wreak havoc, sometimes just to echo the demands of their parents, trashing the place and leaving us to clean up the mess. And where's my fiancée in all of this? She stands in the corner, shrinking away, almost trembling with anxiety. I know the trauma she carries. I know the desperate need for her family's love, the unshakable hope that maybe, just maybe, they'll finally see her, finally appreciate her. It breaks my heart to see her this way, knowing that she's in therapy, trying to heal, trying to find a way out. But nothing changes. I've spent 2 long years trying to set boundaries, trying to push them away, but nothing works. This is her house, the one she bought herself, and no matter how much I contribute, financially or otherwise, she refuses to let me have a say in who gets to walk through that door. She's been beaten down for so long, mentally and emotionally, that she doesn't know how to stand up to them. Recently, she confided in me, telling me that she feels like she needs their approval, that she's somehow not good enough unless she lives up to their expectations. It's crushing. She believes they were right about her, that she needs to change for them. I've had countless conversations, full of tears and desperation, begging her to take the steps to break free from their control, but ultimately, I can't force her to change. She's an adult. She has to want it for herself. I love her, but the resentment is building. It's unbearable, watching the woman I love destroy herself for people who treat her like garbage. The pain of seeing her cry herself to sleep, night after night, because of them, it's eating away at me. I've tried over and over to help her find the strength to cut them out of her life, but it feels hopeless. I can't help but wonder, what happens when we have children? What if she invites them into our lives when she's postpartum? What if there's a medical emergency, or what if our finances get tight? They'll still demand money, still try to control us. This is a family from hell, and I won't be able to avoid them forever. Tomorrow, I'm going to sit down with her and tell her how I feel. I want to delay the wedding. No, I need to delay it until we set firm boundaries. If that causes resentment, then I'll walk away. I can't keep doing this. I refuse to watch her destroy herself any longer. I told her, with every ounce of frustration and anger I had built up, that her family were nothing but abusive parasites, users who would bleed her dry. I had never seen them show even the slightest shred of decency towards her, and it broke me to watch her still try to appease them. But she didn't see it that way. She told me, with a kind of quiet resignation, that all she needed to do was work harder, that maybe then they would finally appreciate her. It was a slap to my soul. I yelled at her, told her no child should ever have to beg, plead, or work themselves to the bone for their own parents to show them love. It was infuriating to watch her struggle, to see her still holding on to this desperate hope that they would change. Finally, with no more patience left, I told her, straight and cold, that she needed to set boundaries with them or I was walking away. The explosion that followed was immediate. She was furious, her face twisted in anger as she screamed, and then, just like that, I was kicked out of her house. It was surreal. I had no place there anymore. So, for the last few days, I've been holed up in a hotel, my belongings packed away in storage. Honestly, I've been enjoying the solitude. It feels like a weight has been lifted. I've had the chance to catch up on movies, video games, and just, well, live without the constant chaos her family brings. After work, I get to return to a quiet room, no more endless messes, no more tension. It's been a relief. But yesterday, everything came to a head. We've been in no contact since she kicked me out. I know Saturdays are always her family's day to descend on her, to consume her time and energy, to use her as a shield from their emotional abuse. I knew she would call, begging me to come home, but I had had enough. So, I did something petty. I muted my phone all day and lost myself in a game. I wasn't going to play the hero this time. As expected, by the end of the night, she had sent me a dozen desperate texts and even 2 frantic voicemails, begging me to return. I let the resentment build in my chest as I listened to them. At that point, I was done being her emotional punching bag. But, after a moment of silence, I decided to go check on her. When I walked through the door, she was sitting in the living room, sobbing. My heart twisted as I saw her there, breaking. She threw herself into my arms, clinging to me with desperation, the weight of everything crashing down on her. I let her sob for a moment before asking what happened. The truth came out in jagged pieces. Her parents and her brother had shown up uninvited, demanding money, taunting her, and pushing her to give more than she had to offer. She wanted me to come help, but I had turned my back on her. And that's when it finally clicked for her. She kicked them out, but not before they spewed the most horrendous words at her, words I won't repeat. She apologized over and over, begging me to come back home. But I couldn't just forgive and forget. I had built up so much resentment. I loved her, I really did, but this had gone on long enough. I explained, as calmly as I could, that while I understood her trauma, I could not continue down this path without some serious changes. She needed to sell the house. She couldn't keep living there with her family's toxic influence. I made it clear, if we were to move forward, we needed a fresh start. We buy a new house together, one where I had an equal say, where her family would never step foot inside. I would not live in a house where I had no agency. I was done. I also told her that I wasn't asking for much, just that she get a new therapist and that we start premarital counseling. I wanted to go low contact with her family now, but that would only be the beginning. We had to work towards full no contact. I told her I loved her, but if she wasn't willing to commit to these changes, we had to part ways. It wasn't negotiable. She sat there, looking defeated, but she finally admitted that she had realized her family was toxic. She wanted to make changes, but she knew it would take time. For now, I'm staying in the hotel until I go to stay with family. She's welcome to come visit, but I made it clear her house wasn't a place I'd return to. We agreed to spend some time together tomorrow, but I wasn't holding my breath. This wasn't over. But I needed space, and honestly, I wasn't sure when I'd update again, maybe mid-August, depending on how things go. Comment 1. It's cute you think she won't continue to choose her family over you, but it's going to get even worse once you're legally bound by a house purchase. Comment 2. She isn't going to follow through. She's going to use you as her shield, but she won't cut them off. If you get a house together, and God forbid have a child, you're tied to them for life. The best thing you can do is step away. Update 2. I told myself I wouldn't update again until later, hoping the space would give us time to work things out, but here we are. My fiancé and I are officially broken up. It happened much sooner than I expected, and it hurt more than I wanted to admit. Here's what went down. After the weekend I spent in the hotel, I thought we were making progress. She seemed open to change, open to boundaries, even considering the idea of a move. We spent Monday and Tuesday together at my hotel, just hanging out, trying to reconnect. But something felt off. Her texts were vague. She was supposed to come over, but she showed up hours later than expected. I knew something wasn't right. When she finally arrived, she unloaded on me. The accusations hit me like a freight train. She called me abusive, controlling, overly demanding, and unsupportive. I knew exactly what was happening. It didn't take long for me to realize she was just parroting words from her family, the same lines they fed her for years. I asked her straight up, "Did they tell you to say this?" She tried to deny it at first, but then admitted that they had suggested it to her. That was enough for me. At this point, I was done. She claimed I was living like a parasite off her, but when I reminded her of the facts, how I paid 50-50 for the mortgage, utilities, and groceries, she had nothing to say. I work hard, just like she does. Unlike her family, I don't demand money or raid the kitchen on weekends. But I guess none of that mattered anymore. I stared at her, my mind racing as she tried to justify her actions. She was flustered, her voice wavering as she accused me of isolating her. I couldn't help the smirk that tugged at the corner of my lips. Isolating you? I shot back, a biting edge to my tone. I've always supported you. It's not me who's destroyed every friendship you've had. It's not me who pushed everyone away because they couldn't handle your family, or because they didn't want to be your emotional shield anymore. The words just spilled out of me. My chest tightened with frustration. Why are you so hellbent on destroying your life for them? I practically demanded, each word a force. She just screamed back, her voice growing louder with each syllable, claiming that I didn't understand her family, that she was only trying to earn their love back. And then, it was like a dam broke. She was ranting, her words losing their meaning in the flood of raw emotion. It was almost impossible to witness, to see how broken she had become. I had dipped into a few online spaces, places where people shared their stories of family abuse, hoping to understand more. And if you've ever read those stories, you'll know what I mean when I say how devastating it can be to watch someone break down so completely. Their minds become warped, convinced that they are the problem, that they deserve the pain. That was her. She was completely shattered, utterly lost in the cycle of abuse, and she didn't want to get better. She just wanted to stay there in the mess, to stay with the chaos. It hit me hard, like a truck slamming into me. I felt foolish, embarrassed, like I had wasted my time. I had tried to help, to pull her out, but I had ignored the signs from the very beginning. This was never going to end well. By now, she was completely out of control, and I was just mentally drained, exhausted. I needed her to leave before things escalated further, before someone called the police. She finally left, but not before a few of my neighbors came by, concerned for me. Some of her friends had reached out, asking how I was doing, trying to understand the situation. I told them the truth, explained that I needed to be alone to process everything, to figure out my next step. They revealed to me that she had been telling them the same rants, she'd been repeating the same words her family had fed her. One friend even mentioned that she might be in danger of losing her job. The way I see it, she's completely spiraling. She's isolating herself, diving headfirst into a lonely, painful existence. As selfish as it might sound, I was relieved it was finally behind me. Comment 1, move out, cut all contact, and move on. You can't help someone who doesn't want to help themselves. Comment 2, sorry it ended this way, but you can't save someone who isn't ready. She's addicted to the toxic love her family gives her. Like any addict, she needs to hit rock bottom, but you can't be there for that. It's not your burden to bear. Update 3. It's pretty much done now, but there were a couple of things I had to clean up. First, I totally forgot to change my mailing address, which I should have done right away. As a result, some important things got sent to her house. I had to go get them, plus a few items I had left behind during my move that I decided I actually wanted. She wasn't responding to my messages, making everything harder than it needed to be. So, I ended up going to her place with a mutual friend, just to be safe. Thankfully, she let me take my stuff without too much of an issue. But everything else? It was a nightmare. She had a lot of horrible things to say, each word more venomous than the last. She told me how she was already sleeping around, how happy she was now that I was gone. She said she was finally free of me. She kept going on and on about how much better off she was without me. The insults, the bitterness, they were all too familiar, the kind of things you expect during a nasty breakup. But it wasn't just that. It was the way she said it. It was clear as day she had been coached, reading off a script her family had given her. Her voice wasn't even filled with anger anymore, it was empty, hollow. She sounded drained, broken. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her eyes were bloodshot, her face gaunt. The house was a mess, nothing like the home I once knew. It was almost heartbreaking to see how much she had changed. She wasn't the person I remembered. That woman was gone. As I was about to leave, I couldn't hold back anymore. I snapped. "Congratulations," I told her, my voice dripping with bitterness. "Your friends are gone. Your human shields are gone. Your engagement is over. Your support is gone. Anyone who ever treated you like a decent person is gone. It's just you and your family now. I hope you're happy while they bleed you dry." I don't think it came out exactly like that, but the point was clear. She didn't say a word. She just stood there, her face unreadable. Then, without a word, she walked away. As I left, our mutual friend Tiffany asked if I was okay. I reassured her I was fine, just trying to get things in order before I left town next week. She also mentioned that my ex had been fired from her job for ghosting them. They're planning an intervention next week, and they asked if I could participate. But honestly, I don't want to get involved anymore. I'm not delaying my travel for this. I know that if I stay involved, I'll only be watching her descend further into darkness, whether that leads to a complete breakdown or something far worse. Despite everything, I feel strangely optimistic about the future. I've realized I ignored too many red flags early on. Now, I'm just looking forward to moving on. I'll be alright. This should be my final update. I'm still in town until Sunday afternoon, so if anything else happens while I'm here, it won't be anything exciting. Comment 1. Not participating in the intervention was the right choice. It might help her, but it's not your problem anymore. She's proud of her new choices. Comment 2. She's becoming just like her family. You did the right thing. I've seen it happen to people like her before, families that break their children down until they become just as toxic as the ones who hurt them. They care more about their family's approval than their own well-being, and they end up just as miserable as the generation before them.